So we're still doing My Two Brown Eyes to be Redeemed. Steve and Loki's story. The story is so huge. She posted a new chapter, so she has officially hit 1.5 million words. And so encompassing and so detailed. You really do need to read the whole thing. Because I am never going to do this thing justice. There's just no way. Like I said, she uses 1.5 million words. Oh, I'm not even going to come close to that. But in the around chapter 70 and on, we get the team accepting Loki a little more. We get Loki accepting the team's acceptance a little better. There's a pool party and more poker and another pool party, a couple trips to Asgard, all of which turns into a bit of drama at some point. One of the trips to Asgard is Thor's de-sewing ceremony. Part of that includes finding out that Thor and Loki's older brother, Hordor, is still alive. And he killed his twin brother, Balder, years and years ago. Except Loki got blamed for it because Hordor is blind. He was the god of darkness. Balder was the god of light. And he tricked the trickster and is completely over the top, happy, ecstatic about being able to claim that. The problem is, as punishment for Loki tricking Hordor into killing his twin brother, Loki's family was destroyed basically because of it. His oldest son, Bali, was turned into a wolf and made to kill his little brother, Nefari. So Nefari is in Helheim with Hel, Loki's youngest and his only daughter. Vali was turned into a bird and set free because Loki thought that was the only way to protect him from having to deal with an Asgardian society who would always blame Vali for killing his little brother when it was really Odin's fault and Hordor's fault. It was them. Loki had nothing to do with it. He guided Hordor's hand because Hordor asked him. And because Balder and Hordor were twins, Loki really didn't think too much about it. And in Norse mythology, Balder, there's a kind of a prophecy that Balder will be killed. And Frigga goes to everything on Asgard and asks its allegiance to Balder, the god of light, that it swears that it won't harm him. And she does this to every single living entity, plant or animal, didn't matter. Except she didn't ask the little tiny mistletoe plant because it was so small and innocuous. Well, Hordor used it to fashion an arrow, and because it didn't swear allegiance to the god of light, it killed him. And Loki kind of had an inkling that something was up because of the color of the arrow that Balder gave him to use, but he didn't really think about it. This is his twin brother. Why does he want his twin brother dead? Well, he did. And I don't remember if how much of the myth is switched in this. I don't remember if Loki does trick Hodor into killing Balder in the myth or not. I can't remember, and I didn't go look it up. I'm a horrible Norse pagan. I don't remember half the damn myths and shit. And every time I sit down to read them, I get interrupted too many times, so I don't. I get interrupted too many times to read fan fiction, but I guess I keep trying that. Anyways, so that's a little backstory with that. Loki gets to see Nefari every once in a while because he is in Helheim and he can come through dreams and see his papa. And Balder is there and he takes care of Nefari. Because it's his nephew. So he does this. And the two eventually find out that it was Hodor doing it. And that leads to another drama. I'll get to that in a second. Thor's lips are free. He comes back to Midgard and kind of decides that maybe he needs to work a little on him instead of working on everybody else, because through the first part of the story, Thor is kind of a man slut. He sleeps with everybody. Like I said, he slept with Jane. He slept with Tony. He slept with Tony and Pepper. He slept with Kelda, the serving girl on Asgard. And then we get to the pool party with the X-Men, and he meets Storm. And he likes Storm, and Storm kind of likes him. Storm uses him a little bit because T'Challa shows up to the pool party, and she used to date T'Challa, and she kind of wants to make him jealous, and she really wants him to leave her alone. She doesn't want to get back together with him. So she kind of uses Thor a little bit and kisses him, even though they don't know each other yet. They've only known each other that day. And Thor decides to keep it going for a while. But he's still working more on him than the relationship builds over time. And you kind of find out in these chapters that Thor's a really good cook. And all these chapters, which is spaced over almost a month, I think, Hel is staying on Midgard. She hasn't gone back to her realm. She hasn't gone back to Helheim. And she's the queen there. So she probably really should have, which kind of creates some problems with her mom, Agrabota, who is sort of appointed kind of a regent while she's gone. And so, clusterfuck there. Mom-daughter fight. And everything else. You also run into Hel getting her first kiss. And it's from Kurt. And Loki walks in on that and blows his top. Not good. And Steve walks in on it. Not good. Steve makes Loki get the Jotun Rock and use it. Because Kurt is blue. Because Kurt is Nightcrawler, and Nightcrawler is a teleporting blue little Christian devil looking dude. And Loki can't really deal with his daughter dating a blue person. He hates himself too much for that. Or at least that half of himself. Kinda works out eventually. You find out that Professor Xavier's a little bit of eavesdropper. Kind of hangs around after the argument and sort of starts to get a hint of what Steve and Loki's relationship is. Kind of figures out that that Loki is very, I think he calls it subservient to Steve. And yes, but there's a reason for it. And it works for them. Works for about half the people in this damn story. Because not only is Steve and Loki doing a dom sub kind of relationship, so is Pepper and Tony individually with just themselves, no Thor. And so does Clint and Natasha, and it starts kind of around here. There was a painting that Steve was doing of Loki in his Jotun form being conquered by an Asgardian. And they needed an Asgardian, and they used Natasha to do it, kind of standing in for Sif. And miscommunications, people jumping to conclusions. Clint thinks that Natasha is sleeping with both Steve and Loki, which, not even close. They kind of do a small scene one night, because Natasha says she wants to learn, and Loki points out that she doesn't want to learn the dom part, she really wants to learn the sub part, just like Tony did. And it works out for the 3 different couples. The poker party is a rematch between Bruce, Logan, Natasha, Steve, and Loki. Bruce ends up winning, so you get to see Natasha naked. Steve gets to see, at that point, his 3rd girl naked. And pretty soon he gets to see Loki naked as a woman. There is a gala. And this happens, I can't remember, after the pool party. And everybody's there. And she sneaks in a little DC here and there, DC Comics, because Bruce Wayne, Batman, is mentioned. He doesn't make an appearance, but he's mentioned. Oliver Queen, the Green Arrow, shows up. You have some interactions between him, Johnny Storm, and Hell. He's mentioned a couple times. And let's see, who else? There's a couple smaller comic characters that I hadn't heard of before. One of them is a female magician, Zahara, I think is how it's pronounced. But that was back when Namor was attacking, just before Namor attacked, and before Odin decides to be a complete and utter dick and kidnap Steve to make Loki come to Asgard for his punishment. Which doesn't work out because Loki pretty much is gonna burn Asgard to the ground, and Steve is the only one that can talk him out of it. And he barely gets that done. So, at the gala, Loki shows up as Henrietta Frost. And they do role-playing quite a bit. And one of the returning characters that they do often is Lieutenant Henry Frost. And I love Lieutenant Frost. He's fun. Cheeky bastard. He's a cheeky bastard. And they get to have a bit more fun when Lieutenant Frost is around occasionally. It's kind of fun. So Henrietta Frost being there is kind of a nod to Henry. But it sort of backfires in Steve and Loki's face. Loki does it because he wants to be able to dance with Steve whenever. So her showing up as her was to do that so that they could dance and not have a media shitstorm the next day. It doesn't work because Lois Lane is there. And Lois Lane talks to everybody at the party that Loki talks to and dances with, which is quite a few people. Not just Steve, but Steve also doesn't just dance with Loki. He dances with Pepper. He dances with Sue. He dances with Tony. He dances with Clint. It's hilarious. He, who is it? King T'Challa shows up, and remember, Loki's good friends with him. So they're dancing for a moment, and Steve looks at Tony and says, "Do you want to dance? All the girls are doing it. We can do it too." So they go dance, and it's kind of cute, the whole little scene. So Lois Lane's there, and she talks to everybody. And she kind of works out eventually that that Henrietta is Loki. Basically because Johnny Storm tells Oliver Queen to be very, very careful of flirting with Hel because she's Loki's daughter. And, well, actually, he doesn't say she's Loki's daughter. He says that her father is here and he will kick your ass. Well, equations are made and sums are brought together, and somebody figures out that, oh, yeah, Hel in mythology is the daughter of Loki, and that's who Oliver Queen was pointing at when, yeah. So they're made to come out the next day in a media shitstorm anyways. That leads to some very heartwarming letters sent to Steve and Loki, thanking them for coming out and for Loki being gender fluid, obviously comfortable enough to show up at a gala as a woman, walks around most of the time as a guy, but doesn't care either way. And so stories of what people have had to deal with that, trying to deal with their own sexuality and their own gender identities is something that's brought forward so that Steve realizes that him wanting to come out, because he tells Loki the night of the gala that he doesn't want to hide anymore. He wants to tell everybody that he's dating Loki and that someday they are going to get married. And then the next morning they get a phone call from Lois Lane. Great timing, girl. So they do the interview, and they find out all these other things. But he did it mostly so that he could walk with Loki in public and not have to worry about it. But then he realizes that so much other good can come from it. That it makes dealing with the paparazzi and asshole reporters a little easier for, well, not that much easier, but a little more worth it for Steve. Loki just drains their batteries and makes all the pictures look like they've all got horse heads and various other things. And then we get to raiding the Hydra base that Loki got all the information from. No, we're not to that one yet. We are to saving the power station that Loki got all the information from. And that works out pretty good. Loki's in on it. He's doing some magic of hiding the actual power station and projecting an image of a false one somewhere else and making Clint look like a copy of a Hydra agent. And to do this, because he's doing the two different things and he's not there with Clint the whole time, they ask Fitz and Simmons from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., if you watch that, to make some sort of voice-altering thing. And they come up with it, and you sort of see some of the bitchiness and Hydra-ness of Agent Ward. Sorry for the spoiler if you haven't watched any of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. If you haven't, too late. Sucks to be you. Go watch the shit. So yeah, you start to see it because Grant and Fitz haven't gone off and done their little side mission to the tiny, I think it was the Ukraine or something, tiny Baltic type country, Russian-ish, where Fitz's skill set becomes invaluable to the locals. He sort of sets it up so that he can be invaluable, but hey, you thought of it, so it's great, it's fine, it works. But so there's still the animosity of Ward having to deal with two science nerds when he is not a nerd person at all and is asshole Hydra. So you see some of that. You also see the empathy Steve has for Fitz, because Fitz is a little guy. He's a geek. He's a nerd. He's not burly, athletic, any of this stuff. He's cerebral, like Steve was when he was little Steve. And Steve still is, obviously. But much more so when he was little Steve, because that's all he had. Now he's much more the total package kind of deal thing. So Steve is feeling for Fitz because he was there. Knows what it's like to be the outsider, and in a world where outsiders aren't ever accepted. Sorry, huge dry mouth today. So they've got the voice box, and the raid on the power plant, works out pretty good. Johnny Storm's Human Torch fire doesn't quite work as well as they would have liked. Some of the things were a little more flammable than others. The line from Hunt from Red October about some things are not... Oh crap, now I can't even remember the line. It's a Sean Connery line to Alec Baldwin about things not reacting well to bullets. Well, not everything reacts well to Johnny's fire either. So we've got that, and while the mission is happening, Hel and Kurt and Peter and Gwen, Peter being Peter Parker, the Spider-Man, are having a double date. They're out bowling. Hel's like, I have to borrow shoes. So that's a little cute thing. And you've got Loki's mom popping up for the first time. She comes to visit Thor, and Loki shows up after the mission, and there's his mom. And he has to kind of figure out how he feels about that. He's forgiven her for everything that Odin did, that she was complacent in. He kind of doesn't necessarily forgive Odin at any point. He just realizes that it takes too much energy to deal with it. It's just too much of a hassle. And he loves his brother, and Thor still loves his father. So he kind of gives in a little bit on that. He doesn't actively seek out Odin at any point, but he doesn't completely avoid him either. Odin comes down at one point and hangs out for, I don't know, like 2 days. And just hangs around, which is kind of nice. They take him around and see the Statue of Liberty and a brewery in Brooklyn and a few other things. We also have what becomes the infamous pool party. And this is a pool party that is set up for Namor to be able to meet Sue Storm. He sees her walking down a hallway at some point with T'Challa, and falls first sight madly in love with her and really, 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 really wants her. Basically, he tries to get her to be one of the spoils of war kind of a thing during the treaty, and T'Challa is like, no, you can't do that. You can't just have her. That's not the way it works on land. No, that's not going to happen. But Loki does agree to set up a meeting so that Namor can meet her. Namor assumes that if he meets her, she'll fall madly in love with him and it'll be all good and he'll go home with her anyways. It's not how it goes. Sue uses it as a way to force Reed's hand into realizing that he takes her for granted and that they really should set a wedding date. And that works out for Sue and Reed. Because by the end of the week, they're married and on their honeymoon. It's a short little honeymoon to Vermont or something. But in setting this all up, Loki includes some of the X-Men as a thank you for the pool party they had thrown a few weeks before. And Steve and Loki have this small issue in their relationship that they work on after the pool party because it's brought to the forefront of their relationship in a most spectacular clusterfuck sort of way. Loki is convinced that at some point Steve will realize how bad of a person Loki is and leave him. And so Loki is always kind of putting out there that he knows he would do anything for Steve, but he knows Steve wouldn't necessarily do everything or anything for Loki. And that ends up being a topic when that wasn't the topic of the conversation to start with, which turns into an argument which makes Loki disappear. Steve is excessively jealous. And you have to remember one thing when dealing with Steve in any fiction of any kind. You have to remember what Erskine said. It enhances everything of the person. Good becomes better, bad becomes worse. Not everybody is 100% good. Everybody has a little something that's dark side-ish. And for Steve, that's his jealousy. And after the serum, I'm sure it was amped up as much as his physical appearance was amped up. So Steve is horribly, horribly, horribly insecure and jealous when it comes to Loki, because Loki is a god. Loki's gorgeous. Loki is anything he wants to be whenever he wants to be. And Steve keeps, like Loki, keeps waiting for Loki to realize he deserves somebody so much better than this scrawny kid from Brooklyn and to leave. So that doesn't help Steve's jealousy in the slightest. And in this argument, the whole topic of, I love you more, I'll do anything for you comes up. And it just drives Steve kind of over the deep end. And he'd been talking to Scott Summers the whole time. And Loki, not really meaning it, it's just kind of his personality. Loki is a flirt. So he's flirting with everybody, but it's not meant to be a come home with me, take me home with you flirt. It's just a happy-go-lucky, camaraderie-ish kind of flirt. The kind that a lot of people misconstrue. Unfortunately, I'm this kind of person, and I've gotten dirty looks from spouses several times. When I have no attraction to the other person in the slightest, And I've gotten the dirty looks from both men and women for spouses. I'm not hitting on your other half. Really, I'm not. I've got my own. I want to go home with him. I already know all his quirks. I don't want to learn somebody else's damn quirks. I don't want to learn somebody else's shit. So, I understand what Loki's doing, and I can understand Steve's side of it too. The flirting isn't the thing. It's how other people take the flirting that ends up becoming the thing. And because Steve is more or less ignoring Loki, it pisses Loki off, so Loki acts up to get Steve's attention. That pisses Steve off. Big circle. The argument happens, Loki disappears. The other problem that feeds Steve's jealousy and insecurity on that is his dad had an affair. And that's how Johnny and Sue are even around, because they're his grand niece and nephew. His dad's mistress ended up pregnant. Nobody knew. She didn't tell anybody. She told everybody that her husband went out west to get work and was killed in a train accident. I think it was a train accident. Killed in an accident. Anyways. But really, she was a single unwed mother. That didn't work in the 1940s, as well as it didn't work in the 50s or the 60s, kind of not even in the 70s. Even today, it doesn't work out very well. I know I was that too. Actually, I was a divorced single mother at 19. I don't recommend it. Don't do it. Just wait. Anyways, so this all feeds Steve's jealousy, and then Heimdall comes into play. He doesn't actually come into play. Loki kind of just drops that he's gonna go see Heimdall. And Steve's already met Heimdall. Heimdall is gorgeous, tall, strong, Asgardian, ideal. Obviously, he guards Asgard's gate, so he is so much more appropriate for Loki than Steve is, in Steve's eyes. To Loki, he's a traitorous, backstabbing bastard, so he wants nothing to do with him, even though he did have a crush on him when he was younger. We'll ignore that. Because, hell, I'd have a crush on Heimdall. I do have a crush on Heimdall. He's gorgeous. So, we get Loki coming back. Basically, he's gone and talked to his mom. Frigg has told him, look, sometimes you have to say you're sorry even though you weren't the one that was wrong. You were right, but in order to move past it, you just have to move past it. So you have to suck up and say, I'm sorry. So Loki goes back to do this. And because Loki disappeared, Steve immediately assumes he's going to Heimdall. Bad idea. I'm trying to remember how the whole thing went. Steve ends up grabbing Loki by the throat to choke him. Steve ends up with Wade/Deadpool's katana blade through his stomach. Wade/Deadpool ends up with Logan/Wolverine's claws through his stomach. And yeah, there's just battle around. So everybody pretty much sees one of the darkest parts of Steve and Loki's relationship out in public, and it messes up perceptions for people for quite some time. Bruce is very, very afraid to be around Steve for a while, basically because his father was abusive. His father beat his mother, in the end beat her to death. And Bruce saw this, and this is one of the reasons why the Hulk becomes a thing. It's his alter ego that he subconsciously had to deal with the abuse, but it never manifested until the Gamma accident. At least this is Logan's perception for it, and I agree with it. It's a good perception for it. I'm sure there's other people who've made that correlation, and I didn't read any of the Hulk comics, and I'm not particularly fond of any of the Hulk movies, just because I think Mark Ruffalo's portrayal of the Hulk is the best. He is the best Bruce Banner. Nothing against the other two actors. I just think he did it best. And I really wish that they would just start from scratch and do a pre-Avengers version of Mark as the Hulk. I think it needs to be done. The other two movies are just disconjointed and shitty. Anyways, my personal opinion. Mark is a much better Hulk / Bruce Banner. Anyways, so the party brings out the instability of the two in front of everybody else, and it scares everybody, because Steve is, as much as he doesn't want to be, as much as they don't necessarily want him to be, Steve is everybody's idol. This is who everybody kind of strives to be, and their idol has this big, deep, dark side, this horrible temper. And nobody really knows how to deal with it. Bruce, the least. Wade doesn't let it slide, but he lets it sit for a bit, because he doesn't know his new dad that well. And doesn't necessarily feel he totally has the right to step in, but he's going to anyways, because it's Deadpool. And Loki does remind them all that he can leave at any point. He doesn't have to be there. He can pop in and out anytime he feels like it. And he can get away from Steve if Steve was being abusive. He's not stuck in the mentality of an abusive relationship. He could see it if that's what it was. And it's not. Everything they do otherwise is out of love and compassion for each other. And passion for each other. So they move on from it, but it does take a while. Even a quick little mental snap that Steve had then isn't something that a couple can get over like that. You can't. It takes time and work. And Steve does put in the time, and he does put in the work, because he does realize he fucked the hell up. He goes to a battered women's shelter and talks to some of the counselors and stuff, trying to understand so that he never does it again. He does really, really feel bad about it. And that goes on for a couple different chapters. Him trying to reconcile what he did with who he is, who he wants to be, who he needs to be. He's a person. He fucks up. And nobody remembers that. They all kind of want him to be perfect because he's their idol. Whether he wants to be or not. So they do eventually get past it. And back to some really good sex. Takes time. A little extra time. They do make it eventually. And to do that, they pull another one of... They make a new role-playing scenario. This one is a Roman master-slave kind of scenario. Loki being the slave and working out some aggression because they come across Lois Lane and Clark Kent at one of the diners. Clark Kent being Superman, only he's not showing that in this. And Clark is sort of Steve's type. Brainy, self-confident, with damage on the side, brunette, tall. Yeah. So Loki sees this and kind of points it out, and they sort of slide Clark into their little role play. Not physically, just as a tool. And it's not one of the best role-playing scenes they have, but it's a good one. It works. Mostly it's so that Loki can get a little back and even the score a bit with strangling Steve. Hey, it's their relationship. They'll work it out. So, we got 41 minutes of me rambling on about this all over again. I think next week I will be doing a different story, do a break from this, and finish up the following week. I'm not sure which story I will do. I'm going to make it a surprise because I don't know which one I'm going to pick. I think I need a small break from My2browneye's. I love you, my dear, but I need a break. I don't know. I'll surprise y'all. Come see my Tumblr Wednesday and I'll let y'all know. Yasmina's Armada of Ships for the Tumblr address. Subscribe to this, subscribe to that, follow me, whatever. Have fun, enjoy. I'll see you next week with makeup on. I didn't do makeup this week. I have tried to sleep all day. Didn't work, but I've tried. So, I'll see you all next week. Bye.